everyone, this is Brian the Girl, and I'm going to talk to you today about how to draw a hand using a cross-hatching style in pen and ink. So the first thing you want to do is make sure you've got the right materials. I use Micron pens. I've got a light that shines down on my hand, which I'll be drawing, and that also lights up my paper so I can see what I'm doing. Then I've got to decide what type of gesture I want to draw. I usually just move my hand around and figure out what looks good, what makes interesting shadow shapes. And there is a way to make your drawing both easier and more interesting, which is making sure the shadow is dramatic. So you've got a full range of shadow from the darkest darks to the lightest highlights. So I found a good pose. I think it's interesting. It's got a good range of light. And then I'm going to start drawing. So first that means taking a pencil because I'm very timid and I rarely start with the ink. It's good to just put in some big shapes at first. You shouldn't care about those little crevices and the little curves and exactly what your hand looks like. You just want to get the volume in. So how big is your hand? How big is the palm relative to the fingers? How wide is the wrist? How thick is the thumb? The most important part of the pencil drawing is to just make sure your proportions are right. So once you feel that everything is the right size generally, then you can start coming in with the details. And this is also the time when we can start putting in the little wrinkles in the hand, which are my favorite part. Then the last step before we start putting ink down is to decide where that ink is going to go. So laying out the areas of the darkest shadows and especially the areas of highlights that we just don't want to touch with our pen at all because they have to stay bright. So now I'm just structuring the hand based on which areas are going to be light and dark, and I don't label them or anything because I can always just look at my hand and see. It's more about where the edges are. The way I like to start the drawing is by doing something that's really easy, that's pretty much foolproof, which is putting in a very light layer of shadow over almost the entire drawing, just saving those little bits of highlights that we circled in the beginning to make sure that they stayed bright. So now I'm just laying in a horizontal line and making sure to follow the curves of the hand. So I don't want a really straight line because hands aren't flat like a piece of paper. They're rounded objects, and I want to make sure I'm coming up over the edges and sort of swooping over. So it's really important that you're looking at what you're drawing and not just the lights, but actually the way that it is in space. And so if a finger is rounded, then you got to make sure your line is rounded to reflect that. So I'm just laying in this light shadow, and if there are any areas that I'm not sure about, for example, if I'm not sure how wide a certain finger is, I won't go all the way out to the edge because I want to leave that for later, for when I put more ink down and I can see more what the hand should look like. And then once I've made my way across the whole drawing and just laid in this basic light layer of shadow, then I can start coming in with a vertical line or a diagonal line and adding to the layer of shadow. So going in on those slightly darker areas, sort of trying to add some depth to the piece. And being timid at this stage can still be a good thing. You don't have to go for those bold shadows. You can kind of just shade it gradually, and just find which areas are dark over time. At this point, I can really see what the hand looks like. I like to come in with a pen outline, just do a light outline around it, and I'm very careful about it because I don't want to lock myself into a proportion that's wrong. So again, if I come across an area that I'm not 100% sure about, I'll just skip it and it'll become clear over the course of the drawing where that outline should be. This is my favorite part of the drawing, which is when I erase the pencil outline and I can really see the ink drawing come through. And I can see the wonderful parts of it that are exciting, the depth that I've created, and I can also see the areas that are lacking a little bit. So now I'm just going to start darkening and darkening and darkening. So in this last bit, it's just me obsessively looking back to my hand, looking back to the drawing, saying, what's different here? What am I missing? What does my hand have that my drawing doesn't? And I'm also adding in those tiny things that I didn't even intend to from the beginning, just these little wrinkles and edges of the nails and stuff like that. Let me know if you guys have any questions, and feel free to subscribe if you want to see more tutorials from me. Thanks for watching, and I really hope this helps.